Alright guys, I think it's time for me to finally face my biggest enemy, being the creature who has been ruining my life. It's also time for me to review EX Deoxys. The set is very vast, and introduces roughly 7 new artists, with even 2 returning from all the way back in Expedition, which is crazy to think about. But I was just thinking about how I'm going to confront this entity, and it seems to be flying away every time I start to see it. So, where am I going, you may ask? Yes, I'm going to space. I know, it sounds silly, but let's go to the literal rocket that I found. But before we do that, I need to talk about a few things. Firstly, EX Deoxys released on February 14th, 2005. It features 109 total cards with one secret rare. The set also features a new reverse holo pattern, which means it's time for a wardrobe update. Alright, all good. Anyways, the reverse holo effect showcases the EX Deoxys logo while only the X is colored in, but for the reverse holo rares, the whole word is colored in, and the background showcases these rapidly changing stars, which is kinda hard to explain, but it looks really nice in my opinion. Anyways, we'll start with the trainer cards, and starting with Keiji Kinabuchi, reprinting 4 of his previous cards, and I'll just talk about the Master Ball, because it's probably the coolest one. Jungo Suzuki reprinted the Crystal Shard, which is actually Suzuki's last card, sad to say. Ken Sugimori reprinted the Lady Outing, as well as illustrating the Professor Cosmo's discovery, which shows Cosmo identifying a fossil as a Diglett is in the background. Ryo Ueda worked on the Space Center, which showcases a rocket with some scaffolding, quite like the ones that I'll be going to soon enough. But they also worked on the Meteor Falls card, which shows the craters with a land with some waterfalls in the back. The Boost Energy is a reprint from Shinichi Yoshikawa, and Takumi Yakabane returns to give us 2 new energies, being the Heal Energy, which shows an energy with a growing or deteriorating leaf in the background of the card, and the Scramble Energy, which showcases 3 different energies emitting light out of red, blue, and yellow hues that are mixed all around. Most of the artworks for the trainers in this set are reprints, but that's okay, as it doesn't really bother me, because there's a lot to talk about in this set anyways, so let's just go. So this is the, for lack of a better term, Space Center, and this is where the rocket is. And if you're wondering how I got here so fast, it's because it has always been right next to my office, which is pretty convenient, isn't it? While we go up to the boarding bridge, I'll start talking about the regular cards in the set. First, we'll talk about a new artist introduced in Deoxys, being Kanako Io, working on the Shroomish, which walks around with another Shroomish as they stand near a tree, which is nice, stylistically, with some thicker outlines and lighter on the bottom. It makes the card pop. Next, we have a returning artist, being Aimi Tomita, working on the Poochyena, which has wispy movements behind it as it jumps through the sky, and it looks like some stylized grass is up in front and behind the Pokemon, with some outlines all around it. This card looks nice, but unfortunately, Tomita didn't come back to illustrate any more Pokemon cards, unfortunately. Next, we have Asuka Ibashita, who is last seen in Expedition as well, but in this set, they worked on Makuhita, who punches at the camera and breaks a rock into many different colored pieces: green, red, blue, white. It's actually a really cool card, and I like how it's running at the camera as well. Now, we have Horoki Fujino working on the Electrike, who grabs a garden hose and sprays it to the left, and it forms a rainbow in the background. I like how all the aspects of the card bend in a circle. It looks very uniform even though there's so much stuff happening, and for our first card, Fujino did a good job with this one. Another new artist introduced into the set is Kenichi Toyama, working on the ball toy, which stares forward as the sun sets behind it, and it reflects off of the ball toy, which looks nice, and I like the cloudy haze covering the part of the sun. And now we have another new artist, being Takao Uno, working on the Slackoth, which shows one sleeping and the other one falling off over it. The Corfish, which looks at a little barboach, and the Bagon, which splashes the water around it as it opens its mouth while looking at the camera. These cards are nice for first cards. The colors are lighter overall, but the artworks of the Pokemon are all doing something interesting, whether it's sleeping or splashing all around. Next, we have Sachiko Adachi, working on the Zubat, which comes out of a tree opening, with the sun in the background setting behind it, and the Golbat, which flies through the air with mountains and clouds in the back. These Adachi cards are more nice cards with the super cool style that they have. Next, we have Yukamori, working on the Phanpy, which walks around in some mud. The Natu, which stands atop a rock looking in the distance. The Donphan, which stands on similar dirt to the Phanpy. And the Xatu, which looks to the left with its wings extended and nice water is seen in the back. These Mori cards are nice. I like how small they made the Pokemon look in them. Next, we have Miki Tanaka, working on the Barboach, who swims through the light blue waters with bubbles all around it. The Wishcash, which swims through the slightly darker water, and bubbles are still present. And the Tropius, which looks up as leaves fly all around it, and it casts a big shadow below it. Now, we'll talk about Koki Saito, who worked on the Seedon, which hang above a tree, ready to drop down, the Nuzleaf, which primes its fists and hands, ready for a strike as it looks to the left, the Skarmory, which shoots some kind of sonic blast as it flies onto the card, as it takes up a majority of the space, and the Shiftry, which slams its leaves and looks super upset as it looks down. These Saito cards are nice, as always. I especially like the Skarmory, personally. Now, we have Ayakusube, who worked on the Slugma, which eyes burn up as purple and yellow effects wave away from its face, the Shelgon, which jumps through the sky with angry eyes, the Magcargo, which looks down as a blazing inferno can be seen bellowing below it, and the Sableye, which looks the most normal of a Kusube card out of all of these, as it opens its mouth and looks straight at the camera. These artworks are all still really good, even if some of them don't have that specific Kusube shading effect. Next, we have Hiromichi Sugiyama, working on just one card for the set, being the Rayquaza non-holo, as it flies through the sky and looks to the right, with lightning and puffy clouds in the backgrounds, which looks really nice. I like the contrast of the green and the blue. Next, we have Midori Harada, working on the Talo, which slices the air ahead of it, the Slugma, which melts and goops downwards, the Swallow, which slices downwards as it looks forwards, the Magcargo, which looks back as fire bellows below it and behind it, and all these cards feature Harada's signature style. And now, my arch nemesis, Ken Sugimori, returns to do some Pokemon, starting with the Spoink, which bound around an open field, and the Lotad, which gets rained on. These two are the only ones that I really enjoy from Sugimori in this set, and that's just because there's something happening in the cards. The Lotad being rained on is probably one of my favorite Sugimori Pokemon cards that we've seen in a while, which is actually a good note. Now, we have one of the artists with the most previous accolades, being Hironobu Yoshida, working on the star of the show, being Deoxys, the defense form, which looks up as it flies through the nebula of a sky, the attack form, which can be seen throwing its DNA tentacles everywhere, emanating a pinkish energy, and the normal form Deoxys, which opens its hand trying to reach down and grab its other arm as it twists around many times over as some sort of galaxy sits behind it. All three of these Deoxys cards are super distinct. They showcase all the different forms of the Pokemon and all doing something different and interesting. And these cards made me love Deoxys even more than I already do, as it is my favorite Pokemon. Ack, that sound is getting louder and louder. Let's just go through the bridge and get onto the rocket. Alright, here I come, alien. Let's just talk about the holos as we ascend into space. Starting off our holographic cards, we have Mitsuhiro Harita, who worked on the Surskit, which looks aggressively at the camera as bubbles float all around it. The Vigoroth, which opens its mouth wide open and screams outwards. The Masquerain, which floats through the sky with parting clouds behind it. And the Slacking Holo, which lays down on the floor as it lazily eats some kind of berry off the ground. These cards by Harita capture the realism in Pokemon that really make you appreciate it as if these Pokemon were in our everyday lives. Next, we have Yukiko Baba, whose charming style always draws me in. Firstly, we have the Staryu, which sits on a rock as water flows all around it, and waves splash up on the rock. The Nincada, which looks at the camera as it sits in an autumnal field. The Starmie, which coasts through the coral reef. And the Shedinja Hollow, which looks bright as it's surrounded by dead trees. And now we have Katsura Tabata, who worked on the Ninjask Hollow, which shows many after images as it swipes through the air, which I actually quite like. And it works well as a 3D card in my opinion. And Tabata is just a talented 3D artist who's always been pretty notable. Now, we have Naoya Kimura, who worked on the cute Electrike, which sprays volts everywhere into the air in different directions, and the Mightyena Hollow, which walks through some kind of bamboo forest. And it's nice to see Kimura working on a hollow for this set, as their art style is striking, and it's always noticeable in my opinion, as long as you look hard enough. And next, we have Atsuko Nishida, who worked on the Scoldine, whose lips look a little bit too human for comfort, but they look to the left and are surrounded by some sort of jellyfish glowy thingies. Next, we have the Lotad, which looks up as bubbles are all around it. The Lombre, which has the camera looking down on it to the right, surrounded by tall grass. The Seaking, which floats down in the water looking concerned. And the Ludicolo, which looks to the left with its mouth wide open. These Nishida cards turn up the cuteness to 11, but they are also contained enough that you can easily tell what's happening in the card. Now, we have Sumiyoshi Kizuki working on the nose pass as it strikes the ground, bringing up rocks, and looking stoic. The Jirachi Hollow, which has this colorful rendition of a mythical Pokemon as it holds its hands up and stars fly everywhere. Kizuki's thick outlines really add to a set like a Deoxys, where many other artists do not feature these super pronounced and thick outlines. Next, we have Hisao Nakamura working on this awesome Magikarp, which kind of has a t-shirt background as it flops upwards and splashes threaded water everywhere. The Coughing looks straight up at the camera as blue gas flies all around it and it smiles. The Beldum looks behind it as lightning strikes the earth behind it, which is a pretty metal card for a Beldum. The Weezing's little head looks at the camera with an upset face as the main head looks to the left, not paying attention. The Metang pushes itself off the ground and moves forwards, and the Metagross Hollow stances its legs to the left and down to the right. And finally, the Gyarados Hollow shows the Pokemon coiling around itself as flies rocks everywhere. I love how Nakamura can make me enjoy even a card of a Pokemon like Weezing or Beldum, just giving them so much character and emotion for even Beldum, who is literally just a floating eye. Our next artist is a new one for EX Deoxys, being Tomoko Wakai. Only worked on a Duskull, who floats around as fire surrounds it. The Dusclops Hollow, which reaches its hands outwards as it looks towards the camera with a glowing red eye. And the Crawdon Hollow, which has striking energy lines everywhere as it looks upwards with a nice green background. I can't find much more information on the artist, but all these cards look really nice, and I wouldn't complain if Wakai returned to illustrate more cards in the future. Next, we'll talk about the one and only Tomokazu Kumiya, working on this very upset-looking Wingull, who looks forwards as a shadow is cast behind it. The Numel, which sprays fire out of its mouth, with an aggravated look on its face. The Carvana, which flies through the air with a determined look on its face. The Pelipper, who looks concerned as it sits in the open waters. And the Camerupt Hollow, which brings its hooves up as the sun can be seen shining in the background. These Kamiya cards are still a testament to the skill and power that Kamiya has when it comes to making visually distinctive cards, even among the same evolution line. Every other card that they illustrate looks totally different from the last. Our next artist is Hajime Kusajima, who illustrated these beautiful Plusle and Minun cards, which show one and the other looking forwards emoting differently, even though you can see the other one in either card. The Manectric, which glows yellow as it volts off electricity all around it. The Claydol Hollow, which shoots out green beams, which is definitely something unique for this Pokemon. And the Breloom Hollow, which walks through the forest with a soft shading style. You never really know what to expect from Kusajima, and all their cards are a huge deal because they're just so different and so amazing. In this set, Kagemaru Himeno flexes their ability to make a dynamic card with this awesome Wurmple, which hoists its butt into the air as string goes everywhere, which is really cool just for a Wurmple. The Silcoon looks through the forest as light hits all over it, and the Beautifly Hollow looks to the left as it's determined forward. Himeno's cards in this set all have this intense sense of beauty that I feel a lot of their cards evoke. The final normal artist we're talking about for this set is Kyoko Umamoto, who worked on this cute little Swablu as it flies through the pink trees all around it as it smiles, going forwards. The Solrock looks up in the desert as the sun during the day, and the Lunatone looks forwards in that same desert but further away at night. And the Altaria Hollow showcases many rainbows and colors all over the place as Altaria takes center stage. Umamoto is characterized by their striking cards with thin lines and typically just very gorgeous imagery. Well, we're here in space. Ugh, I'm starting to feel this weird psychic presence. It feels like something is entering inside my brain. Deoxys, I see you, you spacefaring creature. You won't keep getting away with your nefarious plans. You've been destroying everything that I hold near and dear to me, and it's really starting to. Honestly, it's just starting to frustrate me. But, anyways, I need you to stop, because it's just annoying, dude. What did I do to you?
Human, you destroyed my meteor with your crew. They used what appeared to be some sort of hyper beam, and you released me from my meteoric prison. And you have freed me onto this world.
What are you, even, Deoxys? Some kinda DNA monster?
Yes, exactly. I am a space virus. I only seek to destroy, but you seem to not remember too well. Do you?
Remember? What could I possibly remember, Deoxys?
Soon enough. You'll realize why I would be upset with you. Either way, I wanted to tell you that I can forgive you. Someday. That day might be tomorrow, or it may be in years. We'll have to see. Just know that I will be watching over you.
I guess I'll have to find out more about myself after we go on to the next set. I didn't even know that I did all that stuff. I'm just gonna let a DNA monster be harassed just because of something I don't even know? Ugh, I guess we'll find out later. Anyways, let's just wrap this up. Ryo Ueda worked on the Crobat EX, which flaps its wings as it looks down with an upset look on its face, and a nice red background sits behind it. Ueda also worked on the Hariyama EX, which throws one of its palms out in a thrusting motion, with air flowing all around its hand. Hikaru Koike worked on the Manectric EX, which howls up and to the left as a large explosion of energy is behind it. The Salamence EX, which looks to the right as it stands flat, with a black background, and the Sharpedo EX, which jumps right away at the camera as a web background sits behind it. Notably, Koike's EX cards are much darker than Ueda's. Next, we have Shinichi Yoshikawa's EX, being the Rayquaza EX, which looks pretty awesome, as it readies some kind of draconic pulse or a hyper beam that flows to the right with a giant swirly background, which looks nice. And finally, for EX cards, we have Mitsuhiro Rita's EX cards, being the Deoxys Normal, which looks upwards with one fist primed. The second one, the attack form, showcases the Pokemon jumping upwards as its tentacles lay to its sides, and one flows onto the camera. And the defense form, which slams its arm onto the ground, with its feet planted firmly onto the ground. The EX cards from the set are all phenomenal. I really do enjoy most of them, and they all have my favorite Pokemon in them, so I'm biased. Now, we move on to the Secret Rare by Ryo Ueda, being the Team Rocket's Raikou EX, which I believe was used as a booster box topper, but the card actually does look nice itself. I like the black lightning that spikes all around the Pokemon, and I do love the red eyes. I think it's definitely a good Secret Rare card. But now we move on to the main attraction, the Gold Star Pokemon, all illustrated by Masakazu Fukuda. Firstly, we'll start with the Latios Gold Star, which has a nice yellow tint to the Pokemon as it flies through the muted blue sky, with a smile on its face as it bursts out of the card. The Latios Gold Star, which flies downwards in a completely different direction, arms extended. I feel like this one is slightly more dynamic than the other one, but that doesn't mean that the Latios is bad by any means. But now, for the main star of the show, the Gold Star Rayquaza, being one of the most awesome cards to ever be printed so far. I mean, so far, the Rayquaza cards we've gotten are all cool, but this one is just fantastic. I love how you can see its entire body in the card, and it goes away from the camera as it looks back at it, with that awesome gold and black coloration. Truly a legendary card for a legendary Pokemon. No wonder why it's so expensive. But also, it's just a really nice looking card, drawn by a really talented artist. When it comes to my favorite cards from EX Deoxys, I gotta say the Rayquaza and Latios Gold Star, the Rayquaza EX, and the 3 Deoxys Form EX cards. They're all my favorites. I also like the Altaria, Breloom, Crawdon, Jirachi, Mightyena, and Ninjask Hollows, as well as the Deoxys Normal, Sableye, Skarmory, Manectric, Metang, Baltoy, Beldum, Electrike, Wingull, and the Wurmple. This set is just filled with many fantastic cards that are all welcome additions to the EX era, and this is really the turning point of the EX era, where every set is just as memorable as the last, with amazing stamps, artwork, and unique gimmicks to make every set truly special. Anyways, I gotta go. I need to learn more about my past and push forwards into EX Emeralds in the next video. To all my awesome, loyal viewers, thank you so much for supporting me in my videos. And I'll catch you in the next one. Bye now.